Welcome back to Kit Car Direct and MK Sportscars. Now it's about time the youngest person in the company gives you a test drive on the only car that he can afford to insure, the Mazda MX-5 NB. Before we get into the test drive of the car, I just wanted to give you a quick little disclaimer. The 360 cam footage in this video does make it look like I was driving at about 300 miles per hour. I can promise you that's not the case because the car's not capable of that. Now let's get on to the test drive. You're not going to be needing to expect Chris Harris level commentary, but I'll do my best to explain what the car's like for you. And to start with, I think I need to move the seat a touch forward. Right, so it is of course a 6-speed manual. But yeah, let's head out on our journey. Off we trot. And for reference, in terms of what I drive on a normal day to day, it is a Toyota Corolla. So it's a bit of a different car to this. And for those of you who were not very just thought I'd make note of the fact that it is actually a bank holiday today, and I have made the effort to come into work to film a video. So for those of you who don't recognise my face, my name is Lewis and I work over at MK, obviously, hence the fact that I'm sitting in the car right now. I manage all the media bits over at MK, so all the video work, I'm the one standing behind the camera. So if you want to give anyone criticism on how bad the videos are, then send that straight over to me. Now, to everyone else which is watching me speak to myself inside the car, I probably look quite mental, but what can you do, eh? What can you do? For anyone that watches these test drive videos, especially when Andy is driving something which is a bit more high maintenance than a MX-5 NB, being able to talk and drive at the same time is something which I don't think is the easiest thing in the world. But what can you do? Oh yeah, I'm quite cosy in here though, apart from the fact that my head does stick out the top of the roof, which is not particularly ideal. I mean, for reference, I'm like 6'2", so sitting in the car, my head is sort of poking out the top, hence the fact why the roof is down. But also, I think I'd probably get a little bit claustrophobic if I was driving with the roof down, because it's not the biggest cabin space, especially from head to roof, do I say. Please tell me I'm not going to get stuck behind this Volkswagen for the entire journey, because that would not be ideal. So for any of you who have never heard of MK Sportscars before, obviously you are watching a video from the MK Sportscars YouTube channel. We take these MX-5 NBs and turn them into sports cars. So we take all of the running gear from the car, so engine, gearbox, diff, etc., and put it into one of our chassis. And let's just say I've been out in a fair few of them, and they're a little bit different than what I'm driving in right now, put it that way. Right, we're approaching a national speed limit, so it's almost time to give it a little bit of a test. And now I have not got high hopes for the brakes in this thing, put it that way. And of course, as a cyclist, what else can you expect? Yeah, now this thing is not very fast, put it that way. I mean, that was foot to the floor, second and third gear pull, and yeah, I didn't go very far. brakes are quite literally like stepping on a plank of wood, but you know, we can upgrade those. These definitely have got like some budget pads in here, and this car was also off the road for a little while, so I can't critique them too much on that. I mean, so far, it does feel quite... It feels responsive enough to warrant taking this car like on a road trip, so to speak, because I imagine they're relatively decent on fuel, and you've not got to fight the car around corners, because let's be honest, this is not made for rallying. Like, it's not one of those cars. It's not really a sports car, so to speak, although some of the MX-5 sort of activists would beg to differ. But I mean, it feels relatively like pliable around corners. I mean, it's something that I could imagine a middle-aged mum driving. Like, if your mum wants a new car and wants something that she can put the roof down and drive around country roads and just chill out a little bit, then by all means, this would be a perfect car for her. But if you are 25 years of age and you've been driving for a little bit and you want a car that isn't overly slow, I mean, there is plenty of modifications you can do to these things. Bear in mind, I am driving a bone stock MX-5, so I mean, I can't expect that it's going to be a race car out of the box, because it isn't. That's not what it was built for. But the cars do have a lot of character. I mean, there's a lot of stigma around the MX-5s, especially with the NA, with the pop-up lights. A lot of people do love that car, and to be honest, that shape of car is quite nice, and it is very iconic within the, especially like the JDM scene. Definitely one of the most sort of popular or famous cars out of all of those, alongside obviously the RX-7, etc. But the NB is obviously the next gen, so is it better? I do love it when people take up the entire road. I mean, we are in England, so I can't have sort of any other expectations. But they'll be driving the smallest car they can find in the dealership, and they'll still manage to take up the entire road. So, I mean, it's quite impressive. One thing I will say, it falls into fourth really nicely if you're shifting down from fifth. I'm just trying to get used to this really short throw in between sort of third to fifth gear, if that makes sense. So the gap between the sort of middle of the H pattern further over, because with the reverse you've not got like a collar or anything to stop you from putting it in reverse. So if you do try and shift into sixth and you push it too far over, you're going to have a nice money shift. And why is there so many cyclists out today? That's one problem with England. You have a nice car to take around back roads, and as soon as you want to go on the back roads, all of the cyclists have the exact same idea. So be prepared to meet them. But if any of you don't know, this car will eventually be a donor car to turn into one of our RX-5s. So this car will not be in one piece for too long, and when it gets its new identity, its new body, it's going to be a bit of a different car. And potentially, if I can pull some strings in the office, I might be able to bring you a test drive video in one of those as well. Well, that's going to be a bit harder to get temporary insurance on, put it that way. But for anyone that's sort of, generally speaking, over the age of 25, you can get insurance on your own RX-5 very easily. But for someone that's only been driving, I mean, I've nearly been driving 2 years now, so insurance is stupid no matter what car I drive. So we'll see, we'll see. So this specific MX-5 is the 10th anniversary edition, and So basically the bits that you get in the 10th anniversary edition is an LSD, obviously in the rear end. You get a Nardi edition steering wheel and shifter, which I believe do actually sell for a bit more money than the standard edition ones. So if you are buying a donor car, that is another thing that you can sell. Foot is to the floor. Yeah, that was quite anticlimactic, to be fair. For anyone that owns an MX-5 at home, and that thing is their pride and joy. So it's about time that I talk about how much difference there actually is in between the RX-5 and the MX-5. And I'm not saying this to be like a sales pitch, because by no means am I a salesman by any stretch of the imagination, to be honest. I just stand behind a camera and look like I'll just look pretty, really. But I personally have never driven one of the RX-5s. But I have sat as a passenger in plenty of cars within test drive videos or just on open days, etc. And this just feels like a completely different car. Like, if you sat me in the passenger seat of this and in one of our cars, I would never ever in a million years be able to tell you that it is the same engine. I mean, it goes without saying, because you're shaving like half the weight off of the car, so of course it's going to be a lot faster, it's going to be a lot more nimble. You've got a completely different suspension setup, so it's going to feel completely different. The car is basically completely different. The only thing that is similar is the engine, gearbox, diff, etc. So if you are looking to change your everyday driver in your Mazda MX-5 NB into a car which you can really sort of wring the neck of, and if you're wanting to push more power, you can also put a turbo kit on there, which will of course grant you more brake horsepower and of course more miles per gallon, because that is the most important thing. We really are getting a nice bunch to be stuck behind today. We've had a Volkswagen, we've had an Ocado van, it'll probably be a tractor next. I mean, knowing these roads, it probably will be a tractor next. The good thing about the MX-5 NB specifically is with the NA, you've got a lot of glorification around sort of like TikTok and Instagram Reels with the whole pop-up light scene, because a load of car girls nowadays and people that are interested or like borderline interested in cars, they've just entered the sort of JDM scene. They want to get in one of the NAs, so they have gone massively up in price, especially to find one that isn't rusty. But the NBs, you can pick them up for no money at all, like genuinely no money, and you get a lot of car for what you're paying for it. Like, I'm not trying to market this car against the RX-5, because the RX-5 is cheap in comparison to the performance which you get, but by no means have we ever said that it's a cheap car. I mean, a lot of people don't have sort of 10 to 12 grand to throw into a car, and that's completely okay. And you can still have a lot of fun in a car like this, but until you get your bum in the seat of an RX-5, it is a completely different animal. But you can pick up these cars for like £400. Like, Pete from the workshop has bought an MX-5 NB. Yes, it is very rusty, and you could probably put your hand through the sill, but you're getting a completely sound engine for £400. Tell you what you can do though, you can throw it around the corner pretty well. In comparison to the other cars in this price range, this does handle a lot better than, say, my Corolla as an example. I am growing to like the car quite a lot the more that I drive it though, I will say. It is, it's an interesting experience. Now we've got a test of how good the turning circle is. Actually, I don't think I have enough faith in this car to do me a complete... Now that is the joys of a rear-wheel drive car. You can spin it round relatively easily if you need to. And we are going to have a nice leisurely stroll back to the workshop, I do believe, because this is not going to be the most efficient journey in the world, so to speak. Stuck behind a van, another car, and this Suzuki, which also appears to be going about 4 miles per hour. So in my opinion, who is this car for? Let's have a little conversation about that. So if you've never driven a rear-wheel drive car before, something like this is perfect for you to start off in, because you've not got enough power to send you into a tree at 1,000,000 miles an hour. Even if you're wringing the neck of the engine, you're still only going to be doing just over a ton, really, like realistically. So this is a great car for you to learn how to drive something that is rear-wheel drive, especially putting it round corners, instead of like in a front-wheel drive car just completely planting your foot and hoping that you make it round the bend. These are a little bit different, so that is definitely a good point. That is something that I would have considered if I'd never driven a rear-wheel drive car before and I just jumped straight into one, just to sort of get to grips with it. Even if you have it for six months or so before you upgrade it, it's a good thing to get to grips with before you jump in something which is high power and end up in a tree. So there's your number one, which is effectively young drivers which are looking to get into a rear-wheel drive car. Number two, as mentioned earlier, I would say the middle-aged woman which wants something to blast around country lanes, or just to go and take their dog in the passenger seat, go up the pub, go for a nice leisurely stroll. Number three is someone that wants to buy a really cheap car and they've only got £400. Number four is someone that wants a fast car and buys one of these to take apart, which is all of our customers basically. Now the MX-5 definitely does have its place in the automotive industry in terms of being a fun car. I mean, I've had quite a lot of fun just driving this about, and I haven't even got the back end loose really, so that is definitely a positive of this car. But if you're used to driving fast cars, say if your daily driver is anywhere north of 200 brake horsepower, even if it's front wheel drive, this is going to feel sluggish as anything. And that is me being completely honest here. You can turn faster than that, mate. Love a false neutral. Yeah, I haven't really got the speed to catch up to this guy. The MX-5's not got that in his locker, unfortunately. I will say, driving this round, it doesn't feel like that much of a light car. My opinion might be completely biased from sitting in cars that weigh like 500 kilo. So, I mean, take that with a pinch of salt, because it's not going to be the most valid point in the world. But yeah, they don't feel ridiculously light. Like, I have enough confidence to throw this round a corner and think that it's not going to end up on its roof, which is always a positive, because I've always found that a lot of hatchbacks, well, personally that I've not driven like performance hatchbacks, so to speak, apart from a Honda Civic Type R, the EP3 generation, the EP generation. I always thought that throwing that round a bend, it always felt like it was going to end up on its roof. And this doesn't have that much body roll in comparison to something like that, so if you've ever driven one of those, you'll know what I'm talking about and sort of put it in comparison with this. So yeah, you can put it round a corner, it's not going to come out on you, because even if you tap the accelerator, there's not enough power to send the back end trying to overtake the front end. So in terms of personal verdict, would I own one of these? Yeah, I probably would. I wouldn't want it as my daily driver because it's a comfortable car, but personally, I mean, I suffer with sciatica. So general rule of thumb if you have back problems is you want your knees to be lower down than where your arse is sitting, if that makes sense. So currently my knees are quite a lot higher up than where the seat is positioned. So I know if I was to drive this for a very long time that it would start hurting. So in terms of a daily driver, I wouldn't really want one. But in terms of a weekend car, just to go on a little blitz about on some back roads, then yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, they're cheap, they're fun, and you've got a bulletproof engine, so you haven't got to worry too much about reliability. That being said, if I did have the spare money, without a doubt would I own an RX-5 for the exact same purposes. I would own it to primarily take on some nice scenic routes, some nice drives with some friends which also have pretty cool cars. So, or for anyone that loves the MX-5 range, that swears by it. I know there's a big community surrounding the MX-5. So a lot of you do use it as daily drivers, and I'm not going to disagree with you that it is potentially usable as a daily driver. However, the car doesn't have a lot of room. There's not really much boot space at all. You can't really keep a lot of stuff in it. It's not like I couldn't drive down to Devon with my girlfriend and have enough room for all of our luggage. Like, unless you had a roof box, that is almost the only way that you could do it. So in terms of what you're sacrificing to change one of these into an RX-5, in my personal opinion, it's very minimal, but it purely just depends on how well this car meets your needs. So in terms of room, I know this would not be enough for me, so I would never buy it as my standalone car for me to take stuff in. So if I was to then go and buy an RX-5 or build an RX-5, I would not be taking a hit on the fact that I used this car for storage room or for anything of that sake, or even as a daily driver, because this would primarily be a weekend car for me. So I understand for anyone that drives one of these and loves them dearly as their daily, that they don't see the RX-5 as a suitable car. But if you have one of these and you use it as a weekend car, then the RX-5 is a good option for you, just to make it a bit more fun, really. Now, there's a lot of factors to do with test driving a car, especially a pre-owned car like this. I mean, you've got brakes, which I've already mentioned, depending on what pads they've got in it from when you pick up the car. You've got tyres, which we have some Linglong ditch finders on here, so in terms of grip, I haven't said all too much because I know that is heavily dependent on what tyre compound you have, and I've sort of got the worst case scenario tyre on here, so I can't be too biased about that, because if I had some nice Toyos or something on here, I'd definitely have a bit more grip. But in terms of like the suspension, as a primarily like just as a road car with stock suspension, it compensates for bumps well enough. I mean, I wouldn't go as far to say that it's like amazing, but it's comfortable enough for you to take on the road. As long as you're not caning it too much, then I would definitely look at, for a safety aspect as well, upgrading it to some different suspension would definitely be a good idea. The steering is very light on this, I will say. Like, you could definitely steer this with one finger, which can be a positive, can be a negative. It just depends what you use the car for. As previously mentioned a trillion times, if you're a middle-aged mum that wants a new car to take their dog out in, that would definitely be a better thing, because you haven't got to worry about proper heavy hand in the steering. And if for whatever reason, if your mum somehow gets the back end loose around country roads, she can turn the steering relatively quickly without worrying too much about having to put too much force into it. But that being said, if your mum is drifting round back roads, then fair play. I mean, fair play to her. But I don't think she is. So I think that marks just about it for this test drive video. If you want me personally to record more test drive videos for whatever reason, then please put a comment down below, and I'll try and pull some strings at the office. If not, then you're back to having Andy or Sean, depending on who's available on the day. But yeah, this has been the Mazda MX-5 NB. A fun little car with its place in the automotive industry. Thanks for watching. Please leave a like, subscribe and share the video, and we will catch you next week.